Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action this week in the British Basketball League. Not quite as much drama as there was last week, Dave.
No, I can't have everything, Dan.
No.
There
Finish,
is action.
finish with a 1 point game at the weekend, so we'll get to that. Let's start on Wednesday night in the Euro Cup, where London Lions Euro Cup campaign came to an end. Joventut Badalona 89, London Lions 78. Vivas hit a couple of threes. Power hit one as well. The first 9 points of the game to the home team. Ellenson then hit a three-pointer, and it's 12-2 after 2 minutes, and they're already 3 minutes. Sorry, they're already in a hole.
Yeah, Badalona obviously are good. They're
Mm.
sixth in the ACB, so that's top end ACB. And when you look at the teams that are above them, you're looking at Baskonia, Real Madrid, Barcelona. It's a pretty high level team. The start was unfortunate for London because it kind of set the tone and it allowed Badalona to kind of keep them at arm's length and keep almost any kind of doubt out of their heads that they were going to win. I think they were comfortable, whereas in a game like that you have to try and keep it close. You have to be tugging at their heels and constantly putting kind of uncertainty into their head that, hang on, something could happen here. And the reason that, to be fair, the reason that London gave up those 9 points was because they were just a little bit over aggressive. They were just over ready for the game. They overhelped on the roll man 3 times and 3 times kicked out, 3 times open threes. And coach called a timeout. And once they sorted that out and defended them just, with a little bit less adrenaline, they were able to defend them fine.
Yeah.
And so that was frustrating. And then obviously the second thing that really, is kind of gutting for London is the fact that Decker was one leg, to the point whereby he couldn't play in the third quarter at all. He came back with 7 minutes to go to give it a go for his coach. You imagine, and if you take away Kufos and you take away Decker, then what you've got is a really good team. You don't necessarily have a really good Euro Cup team to play at Badalona. You've got guys like Tomic and those guys, So there was I felt a little bit for London. I thought they really, they were really ready for the game. I thought they really showed out, to use the phrase. You couldn't say that they didn't give it all and weren't properly prepared. But there is a gap. Obviously, there's a gap. And what you've described there was the game, really.
Yeah. That was my take. Every time London got it to sort of 4 or 5, Tomic would score, Guy would score. They'd get to the free throw line, they'd make some free throws, and it just felt like Badalona were just okay. We'll keep them away, and with that, as you say, Decker. I mean, credit to Decker for giving it a go. But like you say, he was on one leg. There wasn't a lot he could do, and without that sort of separator, I never thought they were going to quite close the gap.
Yeah, and like guys interviewed half time, which was, man, if I could make a 3, we'd be winning by 15 and stuff like that. You could tell that Barcelona weren't overly satisfied with the way that they were playing. But that's credit to London. Best really showed out. It's the format is a shame. It's a to play 18 games and then have it all go on 40 minutes, and when 16 of the 20 teams are having it all go on 40 minutes, it's probably the one thing less commonsensical in the BBL playoff format, to be honest. And it would have been nice to have another shot at them.
It's only the, I think, second year they've done this format. Previously, it used to be best of 3, best of 3.
Well, it's a money-making format, isn't it? I mean, it's a commercial format. It's a format which is, everybody's going to get their 18 games, and then some teams might get 22, some teams might get 19, some teams might get 18. But basically, it gives you a pretty solid revenue base for what you're going to invest in. The problem with formats which are best commercially is that often they're not best from a sporting perspective. And there's often a kind
bring back the 2 legs, that'll be the solution.
To be honest, in European basketball, it made more sense than actually in any other form of basketball. I get it doesn't make sense to the Americans, but I think it makes it isn't something which is outside of the European basketball culture.
Yeah.
Everybody
at one stage, this competition was decided by a two-legged final.
Really?
Mm.
Oh, well, we had one.
Was it this one or the Champions League? Either this or the Champions League at one stage was decided by a two-legged final. I can't remember which.
Well, I mean, playoff formats are funny things. You've got the NBA, which has got 30 teams, which is actually now having playing games for only 6 out of 14 go through, and then having playing games for 7 through 10. You look at all the travel, all the miles, all the games that those teams that they play. And I know the Lions have put something out saying that this is the foundation. And you hope it is. But there is obviously a jump, in that, and kind of making that jump is not going to be straightforward.
No.
It's not. I mean, you are, it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, the headliners in their team were Decker and Kufos, and neither were there. Not Decker through no fault of his own, Kufos because for whatever reason, I hope they've learned a lot, and I hope they're in a position where it is the foundation, and they're going to build. And if they're going to spend the money, they're going to go in it. I think overall, you would probably say it's maybe 6 or 7 out of 10 for Europe this year for them for what they've accomplished. They've laid a marker down. They've shown that the league is here, which is great. They've also had some fantastically attended games in the Copper Box. And in Wembley, there's a possibility. There's a suggestion that there's kind of the green shoots of a culture springing up around them, which is also great. I say a suggestion of because there are some games where there's lots in there, some games where there's not. But the only way you can build it, but you can't build a culture in 6 weeks or in 3 months or in 6 months.
No.
The only way you can do it is to hammer on year, and so there's a lot of kind of good stuff going on in relation to that. Again, what it kind of comes down to is how deep are the pockets.
And
if they're willing to keep emptying those pockets, or at the very least rummaging around in the bottom parts of them, to get to that level, then great. But as I say 6 or 7 out of 10 because I think they would hope to finish top 5 in that group.
Yeah,
and I don't think they were ready at the beginning of the season. If you think about it, they didn't get Jordan Taylor until January. Jordan Taylor has been a difference maker in that team. And obviously, to be absolutely fair to them, they lost Tariq Phillip in pre-season.
Yeah, they did.
Tariq Phillip was going to be their Jordan Taylor. That was the plan. With him being a Brit, you've already signed all your foreigners. It becomes very, very, very difficult at that point to plug in somebody else. But the 7 out of 10, 6, 7 out of 10 is probably because they didn't. I think 7 and 11 was probably a little bit of an underachievement on their talent. But given
the 8 and 10, was it 8 and 10? I think 8 and 10.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit of an underachievement on their talent, but on their experience base, it was probably about right.
Yeah.
So, and I think if they maybe turned a couple of those close wins,
exactly. That's the thing is there's a few games
they go to an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
There's a few games, particularly at home, where they've lost by a couple of points, and then you could have maybe just been 500 in the or 10 and 8 instead of 8 and 10. And
I mean, that game does show though that if that first round seeding is pretty important. If you're playing against a team who's kind of cruised through it in first or second place, then that's going to be different to playing against a team that's battled through into third or fourth place.
They did also get knocked out at this stage last year as the number 1 seeds, if I remember rightly. So they were
ready for that game.
Yeah. The fans were as well. Yeah. So Tomic with 16 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Ellison 14 points, Guy 13, Felix 13, Para 12, Vives 11. Tough to cope with all that different scoring. They also shot the ball well and still had 15 offensive rebounds.
Yeah, they hit them on the boards. Yeah, that's a Kufos thing.
Yeah. Zubcic 19, Best 18, Taylor 14. They were the only ones in double figures as contrast. And London also 7 of 30 from behind the arc.
Yeah.
Let's go, as nobody's ever said before, from the Olympic Stadium of Badalona to Ellesmere Port Sports Village. For Cheshire Phoenix 105, Surrey Scorchers 81. Both these teams obviously
slow down. Yeah. I love Ellesmere Port, Lake Cheshire, whatever. It's not a village.
No, it's not really a
It's
village,
a
is
leisure
it?
centre.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
love that you call it a sports village, but Northgate, it wasn't a Northgate sports village, was it?
No, no.
Back in Chester, and they had a swimming pool there.
Yeah.
I spent a couple of actually quite pleasant hours. It kind of in the viewing gallery, getting warm before one of the games. It was the warmest place in the building. You just go and sit in the viewing gallery with the pool, and you get all the hot air out of the pool. It's so much better. But no, it's not a sports village. I mean, EPSV, you see it on the thing when you come in.
Yeah.
No, come how are you guys? Ground there, all that kind of stuff.
So the Cheshire Oaks Arena within the Ellesmere Port Sports Village, to be
precise.
Like
the Real Housewives, isn't it? It's like the Real Housewives have got in there and said, we're not going to a leisure centre, we're going to a sports village. Sorry. Don't know who the Real Housewives are, honest.
Yeah. So they're both obviously short-handed. Martin's gone now for Surrey as well.
Yeah, that was a bit bizarre, wasn't it? I mean, they let this. Not that he's gone. I get that he's a player and if he's got a job in the league which continues for a couple more months, he's entitled to go and take it. But saying that he had activated a clause in his contract allowing him to leave for nothing. That's a wreck. I'm not sure. I'm aware of many of those types of clauses. Because the risk is that if you sign somebody like on those terms, what kind of commitment are they going to have if they've got half a foot out the door? So I don't know if that's the exact thing. If there was a specific term in his contract when he signed it, saying I can leave at any time I want, then I'm surprised they signed him. If it's just a question of, well, look, I've got to get a job for a couple more months, and
you've only got 2 games left.
You've got 2 games left. It's quite right. It's quite right for the club to release him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect the club to stand in his way in those circumstances. But the announcement kind of surprised me because tough to build a group of committed teammates. If one of them, some of them have got a clause saying they can be out the door whenever they want.
So it was an early 21-11 lead. Surrey then had an 8-0 run to 23-21. Then Cheshire 20-5. And it was 43-26 and basically over with Evans, Austin, Archibald hitting threes.
Well, Surrey are just playing offense, aren't they? Unfortunately, I watched the game tonight as well. It's pretty similar. They're more interested at the offensive end than they are at the defensive end in relation to their transition defense or their help defense or the physicality of their defense at all. And the problem with that is that all it takes is a couple of runs, a couple of bad shots as people are looking at the other guys shooting the ball and thinking, he can put up a bad shot and I can put up a bad shot. A couple of run outs at the other end and you're down by 8, you're down by 10 and you're constantly chasing, and then the next run takes you down by 20 and then the game's done and everybody's playing for themselves. I don't see that with pleasure. I don't really want to kind of harp on about Surrey anymore, to be honest. I think, unfortunately, they just need the season to finish.
Yeah.
To establish what's gone on and just, get on with building something better for next year.
The rest of the game was basically double figures. Cheshire had another 14-0 run in the fourth quarter to up 25. Austin, 25 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists, 7 steals. Incredible stat line.
It was 9+1 rebound.
I think it was 9+1 rebound.
They found one.
They did. Yeah. Archibald, 21 points and 6 assists, 4 of 8 for 3, and Jack, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, 9 rebounds. They were 12 of 24 from behind the arc in total.
We haven't seen Wang either, have we?
No, he's.
I wasn't even sure he was on the bench, to be honest. Today I was looking, I couldn't see him.
I don't remember seeing or not seeing him.
Yeah.
But obviously he didn't play the last couple of games either. Steele 17, Lawrence 13, McFoley and Carey 11. As you say, they shot the ball okay. They had 6 guys in double figures, but basically no stops.
I thought Steele did okay. I thought Steele made players. He was quite efficient. But there's just no connection there between them defensively at all. And there is, you can't, not this time of the season, you can't win like that. Everybody has to at least pretend to make a play defensively. As a team, has to at least pretend to help, or at least pretend to run back.
So let's go to Friday night. Bristol Flyers 87, Cheshire Phoenix 73. King has a calf injury. They're hoping he'll be back or expecting him to be back for the playoffs, I think was the term. Watson Gale was back, having missed last week, and obviously Cheshire are where they are. with players. 12-3 by Bristol gave them an early lead. They kind of, again, this was another one where they kind of stayed in front once they got ahead early.
Yeah, they did. Delpesh really impactful in this game. Ulf, it was probably the hardest game I've seen David Ulf have, because he's basically handled everything manfully since he's gone from being the fourth string big guy to being the only big guy. And he's come in and probably done incredibly well. But Malcolm Delpesh was able to score early around the rim, and Bristol were just kind of ready for this game. And I think Cheshire, obviously, they played Wednesday. I think they were a little bit worn down as well. Obviously, they're down on numbers. That said, as I said, when they're at Newcastle, the one thing you see about Cheshire is when you watch them, they are a bunch of athletic guys. They are BBL bodies, all the way up. Archibald, Austin, Evans, Anderson, Teague, Jack, all those guys. They are absolutely they're going to give you a game anytime you play. They're going to give you a physical challenge. And they kind of hung around a little bit, and obviously the point in the third quarter, which kind of
6 minutes and 1 second to go in the third quarter. It's 50-43. Austin gets called for an unsportsmanlike foul. It's on the shot, so it's the excessive contact one where he sort of pulls him down a little bit. Then this jawing between him and Ollison. Both of them get a technical, so he gets ejected for the unsportsmanlike and technical.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, I hate the rule. I hate the rule that one unsportsmanlike plus one technical equals an ejection. I'm quite happy with two unsportsmanlike. I'm quite happy with two technicals. But this 1-on-1, when a technical can be as little as touching the ball after it's gone through the basket.
Yeah.
To me, I just don't like it. I think it's the disproportionate penalty for the offence that's committed. And I know there's a FIBA rule as well. It requires a degree of discretion, and it becomes particularly difficult in a situation like this, right? Because the refs came to, I think, not if the refs have the video to watch of all of this, and we'll get to that in a minute as well. Then I don't think they would have come to the same decision, but I understand why they did in relation to the individual actions of the individuals, right? What happened was, on the fast break, Austin made a play on the ball, but as Ollison,
Ollison.
It was somebody, well, whoever it was. I don't know if it was Ollison. I think it may have been Miller. I'm not sure. Anyway, whoever it was, as they continue on the play, Austin kind of ends up with his hand on his wrist, hand on his arm, and pulls him and kind of splits and pulls him off balance. That's only kind of a split-second contact, but
there is kind of a sort of like a
twist,
follow through, twisty bit, isn't there?
Twisty bit. A lot of that is momentum, though.
Momentum.
That is the way he's going and the way his arm's going. But I can live with that being excessive, because we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot less knock. We've seen a lot less called, right? Live with that being excessive. Where it becomes, I think, unfair is that what happens then is that Ollison seeks retribution against Austin, and this is the bit that I think if the referees had seen, I'm not sure that they would have given him a technical. And this is also my double technical klaxon. Because what happens is then Ollison absolutely engineers the incident, right? Ollison goes straight into Austin's face and bumps him. Austin's standing 2 or 3 feet off the court at that point, right? Now, if Ollison, I think it was Ollison, I might be wrong, but I think
it was.
Ollison, who basically, who to use the NBA phrase, escalated, right? He escalated it. Now, at that point, as far as I'm concerned, Austin's entirely entitled to defend himself and talk back to him, right? Because effectively, the instigator of the whole incident is Austin by the foul, right? And then Ollison escalates it with the talking, but then you're going to do Austin again for responding to the escalation. Right? So you've basically given Austin a double punishment. Because over the one incident, and you've disqualified him for 2 different things which have happened. The second one has happened before the first one's been called.
Now,
that to me ain't right.
Yeah.
I mean, automatically, if you get in a second, if you're getting fouled out on 2 technicals, you get T.
Yeah.
Going. You've had your warning. You really want to keep going?
Yeah.
Okay. Second T.
Yeah.
Or the unsportsmanlike is called first.
Yeah.
Right. And if you then want to go and make a fuss about it, it's your own fault because the refs have already called the unsportsmanlike.
Yeah.
But they haven't in this situation. And therefore, to turn around and to basically throw him out on a double technical when there is no, for me, the only thing you saw, to be absolutely fair, the only thing you saw on the camera work was just at the end, he had to be held back.
Yeah.
Walking in front of the bench.
Yeah.
Right. And he was talking at that point. And you could, I think, justifiably argue as a referee, actually, at that point, you've gone too far. Everything's down and you're still engineering it. So I don't think it was an egregious mistake, but I think it was a disproportionate mistake in relation to how it impacts the game.
So my take on it is, I thought all 3 of those calls in and of themselves were right. Yeah. I didn't have a problem with them. The problem I've got is the same problem that you've got, is that he's been punished twice for the same incident, largely because somebody else made a deal out of it. So I go back to I can't remember who found it. Was it the Roberson one? I can't remember. There was one where Zach Jackson got smashed and he just got up and walked down the other end of the court. Yeah. So if Larry Austin had done that to Zach Jackson and Zach Jackson had just got up and walked on to the free throw line, Larry Austin wouldn't have got disqualified from the game. And that's kind of my problem, is actually because of the reaction of the other player, he's got disqualified because he's been double punished for it.
Which is what,
he probably deserved a technical for what he was doing, but it was one of them. It just seemed a bit unfair on
I think
on
the only thing that gave me a second thought was when you saw him keep him talking.
Yeah.
It was like, no, Larry, you need to sit down.
But the other thing is that
he hasn't had an unsportsmanlike called against him, so he's not on notice. He's not on warning.
Yeah.
This is kind of the fundamentally unfair thing about it.
Yeah.
About the rule and about the circumstances. And we have in the law, if you're a I never thought I'd put this is coming to my head now. I never thought I would create an analogy in relation to dwelling house burglaries and basketball players, right?
We were all waiting for it.
I thought you were. But in the law, criminal law, there's such thing as a third strike burglar. And if you commit 3 house burglaries, then your case has to be heard at the Crown Court. And if you're convicted, there's a minimum sentence of 3 years and generally quite a lot more. Okay. But the third strike burglary the rule only applies if the convictions and the offences have taken place in chronological order. So basically, you commit the offence, you get convicted. You commit another offence, you get convicted. And the third time, that's where it applies. It doesn't apply if you commit 3 offences and then get convicted at the same time.
Yeah. Right? That's a good analogy. I think it.
It's pretty darn good. It's my head. I literally hadn't thought about that until you spoke. Until you said what you just said. And, there is, it's a really difficult one. Are the refs looking at putting into place something which is proportionate to the kind of offences committed in relation to sanction? Or are they just going to call, as you say, what they see?
Yeah.
But for me, as I say, it's a charter for anybody who's been given a hard foul to go into somebody's face and look for a double technical. And that's what I like about it. And so
the other sort of mitigation for the officials is, I'm pretty sure it was this game. They were very lenient with Ben after he'd got a technical, and so that therefore made me feel, well, whatever was the earlier punishment must have been pretty egregious, because he could easily have got ejected himself. I'm sure it was this.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think it was. I don't think it was a bloodlust. I just think it was the way that the situation from the refs and to throw him out. You could see Gavin Williams go over and say, "Look, he's out." Because it was and I do think it was an unsportsmanlike, as I say, just. but the technical, this is where the double technical thing really hurts. I just do not like it. For me, Ollison is the one who gets that technical. Ollison is the one who escalated the conduct, and it provided Austin doesn't put his hands on him.
Yeah.
And he basically didn't. He went back to him, but provided Austin doesn't put his hands on him, Austin's entitled to verbally, fight his corner in those circumstances. So anyway, and that was kind of the game.
Yeah, Bristol were quickly up 13 after that, and the game was gone.
That's tough. I mean, they're so short on numbers anyway. Then the night of 13, I got to 18 or 20, and my interest waned, I'm afraid.
Ollison 20.6 rebounds, Bell 19.6 rebounds, Delpesh 19 points, 14 rebounds, 55% field goal shooting, 13 offensive rebounds as well. That works. Anderson 18 points and 5 assists, Evans 18, Archibald 10. They shot 35% from the floor. Sheffield Sharks 80, Manchester Giants 71. No side Nelson. His precaution has become a short-term injury, and hopefully they'll massage his precaution back into shape.
I've never injured my short-term before.
Yeah. So Kipper Nichols was back in the starts. Obviously, Robertson is still out for Manchester. Although Kipper wasn't out there for long. Both he and William Lee got a couple of early fouls. They're both out of the game after a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. This is a game which I kind of watched with a degree of disinterest because I already knew the score. It was Saturday night. So watching it with the sound down, just kind of watching it going through it as you go. It was a tough watch in the first quarter. The refs never stopped blowing the whistles. Anybody who kind of looked at Bennett Court got a foul, and they may well have been fouling him, but there wasn't kind of an excessive contact going on. And then the other end the same, and so the game never really got into any specific flow, and I don't know who that. I think that probably helped Sheffield because Manchester are the ultimate flow team. Albeit Sheffield the last few weeks have actually been a pretty good flow team as well. So it's possibly not as a differential as it would have been earlier on in the season. But no, I thought it was just the refereeing in the post in this league is when you watch all the games, it's not overly consistent. Insofar as there isn't much post play anymore. So to be fair, there's not kind of a lot of calls and practice isn't made for us to get practice and stuff. But kind of the step through moves and the stuff like that, I'm not really sure what is a foul and what isn't a foul at times. And there's some games whereby a lot is let go, and there's some games where a lot isn't. And this happened to one of those games where a lot wasn't. And then the only other thing that caught my attention in the first quarter, and I tweeted it.
Free throw.
I was just watching. I was watching kind of with a lazy, kind of half interested kind of look. And I'm sorry about this, Sheffield and Manchester, but there's not much. There is. I know you're fighting between 4th and 6th and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, it was Saturday night, and I just did a double take on the screen when I saw the one. It was only the one, to be fair, where Bennett stepped over the foul line, and because the problem is he doesn't tiptoe over the line.
He was like 6 feet past it, wasn't he?
It's a step, he's got probably got the longest step in the league. And I just looked at what was it? What? I had to rewind it, and then somebody else I noticed being tweeted on Twitter that all six was made foul shots with foul line violations. By the way, that's not on him. Not at all. If the ref points out the first one, then you wouldn't be committing the other 5.
Yeah.
So it's not like they got 6 points out of it. And it was just a kind of a quirk, really.
Yeah.
But, it's not the hardest call to make, that one. It is
on the picture that you put on there, slightly distracting potentially is that there are 2 players also committing a lane violation in going for the rebound. So if your eyes are drawn to that, and then you see the ball goes in, it doesn't matter that he stepped over the line because that wipes it off. But it doesn't matter that they're into the lane too early because the ball's gone in.
Yeah, and the first look at I see it in under 14 CBL all the time. The ref is you're staring along that line. You have to do that.
Yeah.
Now if it's close, right, don't matter.
Yeah.
Right? It's just as the ball hits the rim, it doesn't matter ultimately because it's like being linesman in football. You can't be there and there. It's a rim, and that's why I didn't spot any of the other 5 because the It wasn't. But you know, that's something that, you know, it's difficult to kind of that's what that, you know, to use a phrase, you've got one job at the foul line.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to see that. Just on that though, I mean, just before, I'm not taking the mickey out of Bennett Cook. Bennett Cook is my undisputed most improved player this season. I don't think anybody's close to him. Obviously, it's hard to most improved when you've got a lot of players who come for the first year.
Yeah.
I get that, but the consistency of his game this year, he's become a real centre point of Sheffield. You know, and in the past, I'm afraid you'd have probably one game in three where it would go the way they wanted it to go, and they would get him the ball, and there'll be a couple of games where, you know, he'd make a couple of dumb fouls early and he'd be out of the game, or he'd missed a couple of bunnies and Hebrew would take him out of the game. His consistency this season is probably a major reason why they were able to retool around all the guards. You know, because they could say, right, with him and then with Marcus Delpesh backing him up and playing with physicality and energy, we're sorted at the centre position. And they probably are. I mean, they're probably outside of London. They're probably the best centre combo in the league. I mean, you've got Nelson, Henry and Menzies. You've got Delpesh and Smith. I think on what I've seen this year, I would take Cook and Delpesh over them.
Obviously, what you haven't got in Caledonia is Fraser Tape and Ali Hodzic playing the way that Ali Hodzic is playing now.
Yeah, they've never all played
together.
They've
not played together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, if you had Ali Hodzic and Tape, they'd be in the conversation, undoubtedly, when Tape is back. But you don't know how they bounce off each other. You don't know if Tape is going to be the second guy or not. You know, because you don't see it, hasn't seen it. But no, so yeah, and Sheffield, you know, they got some. They're obviously without Nelson, but they got some minutes from Montgomery, and Manchester were really quite flat, I thought, in this game.
They were a bit weird, Manchester. It was very not like, mind you, their away record's not great. So.
Their away record's not great, and also, you know, they've got some vets and they're playing with a short bench, and they're pretty much locked into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So again, it's, you know, it's a game where you walk. It's an NBA game. It's an NBA February game. You walk away, you choke up the loss, and you know, we'll be ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, and Leicester, Bristol, Caledonia, they won't care. Manchester, won't play any of them.
And I don't think, to be blunt, I don't think Sheffield would either.
No, I don't think Sheffield. Yeah,
Sheffield have been in London twice and Leicester twice. You know, Sheffield aren't scared of anybody. So that kind of keep things on. My only thing for Sheffield is, you know, have they had their spurt? Are they going to be able to kind of? I think it's a good thing for them that Nelson's out, because I think it'll rest him up. It'll give them a little bit of added impetus in the playoffs. Sometimes if you win 8 or 9 in a row going into the playoffs, you're due a fall, and if it happened, it might only be one quarter.
Yeah.
It happened a little bit in the fourth quarter of this game. They had a bit of a drought in the fourth quarter of this game. And it could be one quarter in the playoffs in a two-legged situation that screws your whole season, because you're playing so well, and then suddenly it's just your turn, you know.
Yeah.
So you know, they are, you know, they're the kind of the form horse at the moment.
Yeah, Manchester got it to sort of 6 a few times, but Glasgow would make a shot, Nichols would make a shot, Delpesh would dunk it. They always looked like they were gonna. They always looked like they had a response. Sheffield, which was not something we said of them earlier in the season.
No, that's right, and they know where the shots are coming from. That's the thing. That's the biggest thing. They know where their shots are coming from. At the end of the day, Rod made a few shots at the end.
He did, yeah.
You know, and so it's not. You know, they're the most. Probably even more so than Leicester now, because Leicester have got more moving parts. They're probably the most metronomic offensive team in the league in the way they run their offense, and that means it's not that they're almost saying this is what we're going to do, and these are our counters. When you take something away, and you stop it, you know, as opposed to Manchester, who are the other side, they're the most mercurial.
Yeah.
You know, whereby they're saying, look, we got all these guys who can score from there, score from there, score from there. And you know, the danger with the metronomic stuff is that if it goes wrong, it kind of goes wrong in, you know, 6 or 7 minute spurts, and it can you're not getting any of the kind of the mercurial shot making to keep you in the game. That's in the playoff situation, but in regular season, which is what we've seen from, you know, Leicester over the years, from London this year in particular, you know, that metronomic, that offense that you run it and you basically pick defenses apart. It is really impactful, and I thought Sheffield were pretty good in this game.
Nichols 19, Cook 16 and 11, Pipkins 12, Williams had 19, Lewis 14, Robertson 12 points and 8 rebounds, 9 for 35 from 3-point range. Manchester, the way they play, it's tough for them to win.
Yeah, and Lewis made a few shots as well in his own place as well. So
the game we were both at, Dave, Newcastle Eagles 88, Caledonia, no SNB or SMB flags I could see in the building.
Good. Well, I was slightly worried when I walked in the building, thinking, "My God, if this gets bombed, what will happen to the podcast?"
Yeah. Maybe it ought to be one of those things where we should never be in the same room at the same time.
Place, can't be in the same place. Exactly. I mean, to be fair, on different sides of the building.
Yeah.
But even so, yes, it was a genuine. Will they not think about the podcast? It was a fun game.
Yeah. 88-78. I don't know if I said the score in all of that. Obviously, Tape's still out. Hamlet scoring early on. Gordon too. Decent start by the Eagles. Obviously, they had to win the game, but it was an even first quarter.
Yeah. I think, it wasn't even first quarter, but Newcastle were very Gordon dependent.
Yeah.
No one else could throw it in the ocean, basically. And they started with Hamlet on the bench, and then, it started with Hamlet in the game. He came out, and then when Newcastle's bench came in, Caledonia's bench basically in the first half destroyed it. And around the first quarter break,
yeah, Durham had 11 in a 15-0 run that had Caledonia 17-30 ahead in the second quarter.
Durham was outstanding in the whole game. I mean, Durham was a different level in relation to the pace of the game that he was playing at, and his ability to get to where he wanted. And he was that guy who slows the game down to play at his own speed. I don't think Newcastle were overly brilliant in defending him, but I think it's also truth that he's not an easy guy to defend. Newcastle's, as I say, I put a tweet up at half time about Newcastle's benches hitherto inconceivable level of futility, because didn't score a point, played 30 minutes. Denzel Ubiara played the worst minute of basketball, in relation to made 4 mistakes in a minute, or 3 mistakes in a minute. Mark Stewart decided, probably for the first time most of the season, he would have Cohen and Hamlet off at the same time, and Ubiara ended up at the point guard position. He passed the ball at the wing, and somebody put a shot up, and he just basically sprinted to the basket seeking an offensive rebound. Well, the problem is that he's the last guy back because he was a point guard. And obviously the biggest scouting report on Caledonia is
get out and run, or don't let them.
Let them keep out of transition. So he runs that way. The ball goes over his head. They get a fast break. And he, to be fair, Ubiara gets back but can't rebound it. Doesn't get the rebound he should have got. Then fouls the guy who did get the rebound. And then next time down, dribbles the ball off his leg, and he never saw the court again. In the meantime, there was some, pretty ineffective Mockford and Kennedy rehabilitation minutes as well. And, that's where Newcastle will be most of the season in relation to having units on the court who simply either can't score or can't defend. One of the two. Normally they can do one of the two. But they made a little run at the end of the first half. I think the last 2 minutes of the first half were critical in this game. It was a 15-point game, and they made a 7-0 run. And Gordon made a 3 on the buzzer. And Gordon had 20 points, and the rest of the Eagles had 32. As an aside, I'm not
12 combined.
12, sorry, as an aside, I'm not really sure where that Justin Gordon had been for about 2 months. I'm pretty grateful that the Sky cameras turned up.
You're welcome.
Because it wouldn't be.
I lobbied for that game as well.
Yeah, good for you. It's always good, Glasgow. It's always good. It wouldn't, but it wouldn't be inconceivable to suggest that the extended reach is produced, because he produced a virtuoso performance in this game. It was a career high, but he was a force of nature athletically in this game. And we're at that time of year whereby everybody.
It's a good one to send to your agent. That
it is a good one to send to your agent. Everyone's out of court. Everyone's out of contract in 3 weeks' time. So but to be fair, these players, this is not a secure profession. You're playing for your job. You're playing for where you're going to be playing next year. You don't know if you're going to have a job. You don't know where it's going to be. You don't know if you're going to like the people. You don't know if you're going to like the coach. You don't know if you're going to like the city. And therefore, you've got to put your best foot forward. I just wish you'd done it a bit earlier. this year. So those making it an 8-point game, and it felt like a 15-point game at half. That was pretty significant. And in the second half, basically Newcastle made some shots.
Yeah, it went back to sort of 12 fairly early on. It was still an 8-point game with 10 minutes to go. But to be honest with you, it felt if you listen back to our commentary, we were talking through that third quarter like it was a 15-point game, because it kind of felt like Caledonia were in complete control. And then Gordon 3, Hamlet 3, Mockford then hits back-to-back threes, and out of nowhere, a blistering start to the fourth quarter, and Newcastle are 72-68 ahead.
This is kind of a pattern. There has been a pattern in the VMU this year of kind of similar games, and this game, Newcastle eventually got over the line in this game because Mockford was the third scorer. The problem Newcastle have had is that players score in bunches. So Gordon scored in the first half. Hamlet had 21 in the second half, but you need a third scorer to get you to 80 plus to win the game, right? And they've not always had that third scorer. And this game was Mockford. And if you go back 6 weeks probably actually 10 weeks to the Sheffield game just after Christmas, it was exactly the same. Mockford didn't score a point till the end of the third quarter, but he closed the game. And it was actually weirdly reminiscent of the GB games as well, which he's played, where he's come up in the fourth quarter, with the same coach, running the same stuff, making the same shots, So that was the Newcastle always looking for, but more than anything, they needed to find a five that could defend. And what happened in this game ultimately was it surrounded actually the whole Sloan and Cohen thing, but it didn't start with 5 minutes to go. It started in the third quarter where Sloan started scoring on Hamlet like he wasn't there. He made a float there, he made a step back 3, he made a tough 2, and he looked entirely comfortable. And at that point, they did a switch and Cohen picked him up. Maybe towards the end of and if you remember, Cohen got a block on one of his shots when he came back. Blocked it. And basically Cohen played him more aggressively, probably over aggressively. Certainly, I thought the refs were generous in the way that they called it. When you watch it back, and I watched this back a couple of times, that's why I wasn't that interested in the Sheffield Cheshire game, to be honest. The Sheffield Manchester game, because I watched it back to see what whenever there's a contretemps, there's always something. It's never about the moment.
Yeah, what happened at 5 minutes didn't start. If it wasn't just out of nowhere, it was.
And ultimately, the reason Newcastle won this game, the other reason Newcastle won this game is that Sloan didn't score a point in the quarter until Gordon got a technical at the end, and he scored 1 point, and that's why they held him to 14. You don't just hold the team to 14; you hold the scorers down. And so basically, Cohen got overly physical with Sloan, and started challenging him. Now the problem with Cohen, when Cohen gets really physical, is he tends to fly around places because he's not actually a physical individual. And if you go back, you see that there's a play about a minute and a half before the altercation where Cohen is actually holding Sloan at the top, and the ref doesn't call anything, and then Sloan gets it, makes his move, and Cohen steals the ball from behind.
Yeah,
and that leads to Mockford making a 3 to get that. Now, from my perspective, that was probably a holding foul before we started. It's borderline, but I've seen a lot less called, right? And so, but the point being is that at this point, and Rowe commentated on it as well, Cohen's basically denying Sloan the ball. Now, Sloan's a kid, Sloan's been through a lot. He's a national hero, right? He's coming down from the fact that he's made probably it may well be the biggest shot of his life, but certainly the biggest shot of his franchise in front of 6,000 people to win a trophy 2 weeks ago. And now he's got to get back on the road and he's got to play with these games. He's also a guy who he averaged 10 a game in college. He played, I think, junior college and a couple of years in college. So he's probably never been the main guy to the point whereby, or certainly not as an adult, to the point whereby he's actually got somebody actually in his face denying him. That I don't think, it's certainly not happened this season, whereby someone's literally said, "You're not going to touch the basketball." From an Eagles perspective, watching it back, it was quite nice to see someone take a challenge, as opposed to watching good guards just score on the right, which has basically been the last 2 years of Virtue Moch's arena. What I don't think was right, and there was then a play whereby Sloan got the ball, Cohen got there in front of him, and then Sloan made a move to his left, and Cohen fouled him. with a little bit of an upward motion, just a little bit of an upward motion, so which was a blocking foul. It was called. But at this point, if I'm a ref, I think my antennae would have been up a little bit because there was
something brewing.
Something brewing. There was some tense-ish body language, when you see that going on. And as I say, that's the way, ultimately, that is, disruptive defense within the way the refs are calling the game. There is nothing wrong with that. I've seen a lot I could give you a list of games that we won because I or Fab decided that he wasn't going to let somebody touch the ball. Game with Jay Kuznod, I remember, where he scored 20 points just in 12 minutes. I was like, I'm just going to guard him. Don't let him touch it. And you do it with whatever means that you can. So there's all, and now remembering, there's also, going back a little bit, the game between Caledonia and Newcastle up there was one of the 3 worst ref games of the season. If you remember, that was when Hamlet, Sloan fouled Hamlet's elbow with his chin.
Oh yeah.
And Gordon got called for an unsportsmanlike foul for jumping over somebody.
And
also,
I remember it now.
But Sloan took one from Hamlet in that game.
Yeah.
Right. So this stuff doesn't just disappear between teams. You always got to kind of go back in the history a little bit. So at this point, I think Sloan's probably feeling a little bit kind of like, it's
irritated.
A little bit irritated. Yeah, well, that's what Cohen is. Cohen's an irritant.
Yeah.
He's a nuisance. I don't think he's particularly popular amongst the playing fraternity by the
I shouldn't imagine, no.
He falls over, he falls over a lot, he talks a lot. And to be honest, it's probably his major weakness is his kind of emotional up and downness, his emotional fragility. Whereas for a point guard, you probably want somebody who isn't as emotionally fragile to be in charge. But that said, and this is the reason that we haven't talked about it much, is because that's a long way down the list of all the problems the Eagles team have got. True. Because to be honest, a little bit, if you've got some emotional fragility and you're up and down, at least you're showing some emotion.
Yeah.
Which I'm afraid you saw that. You watched that Cheshire game 2 weeks ago, where they just died, and it was just awful outside of Darius, and there's no pride at all. So that's that's certainly the way that Cohen has been. The one thing about Cohen is that, as I say, because of that up and downness, he's always one that you knew it was hurting him to lose.
That's
the thing.
So let's get to the we talked all the way around the incident. Let's get to the incident. Yeah. So it's 5 minutes to play. Bailey is shooting a 3-pointer, which goes in to make it 72-71. As the ball is in the air, and I didn't see this until at the end of the game, we had another replay of it that Kieran and Nat talked over. And on that replay, you can see what happens is Cohen slaps down at the arms of David Sloan, right? So to me, that's
go back a little bit. If you go back a little bit, half a step before that, on the main reacher, as they're rebounding, as they're going into rebound, Sloan perfectly legitimately, and no suggestion of anything inappropriate, kind of bumps Cohen just a little bit. If you have to go back and watch it, there's a little bump. His arm comes out a little bit. What Cohen then does is basically Bush League, he kind of whacks him on the arm down there, which is an unsportsmanlike foul. Ref see that's an unsportsmanlike foul.
Now, when I watched it back this morning, as the ball is in the air and before it was as the push. Kate she didn't see the slap down, she saw the push, but her hand went straight up for a foul. So what happens is he slaps down.
She did see the push. I think there's a bit of stuff going on with Mockford under the basket as well.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a fist in the air. There's a fist in the air at the point.
Aftermath of the push.
So what happens is Sloan pushes two hands at Cohen. Doesn't quite hit him. Some waggo, I think it was on Twitter, said, "How did he make that shot when he missed Cohen from? How did he hit that shot when he missed Cohen from 2 feet?"
My take on that was, I think it was a glance. I think
it was a glancing blow.
It was glancing. I think there was venom
in it.
But well, there was, but I think what happened was I think Sloan has his his angel and his devil on his shoulder, to be honest. And I think Sloan's initial reaction to the slapdown was, "You don't do that." Basketball players are pretty protective of their wrists and arms because that's their livelihood. Well, you got to shoot, you know, their livelihood. So it's a pretty provocative move to slap down unnecessarily. And I think Sloan's initial thought was, "I'm going to lay you out." I think his good angel just said, just before he did it, was said, "No, I can't do that." But his hands were already at kind of facial level, if that makes any sense. So instead of what he should have done, which would have been the push to the chest, once he changed his mind not to hit him, his hands were already up there. So you get this kind of weird, kind of two-handed, kind of around either side of his head. You know, which was kind of a weird thing. I think it's because he changed, I think to his credit or to his whatever, I think he changed his mind at the very last minute as to what he was going to do. And ultimately, this is the ultimate argument for replay. I've had we're not even arguing it anymore. Be in for the playoffs, right? No, you know, forget next season. There's no reason why it should not be in for the playoffs. Right, you've got 4 games going on. It's not a big technological problem. Even if you've got to do it off YouTube, even if the replays aren't good enough, even if they're inconsistent, why wouldn't you give the referees the opportunity to see that?
Well, before the referees had got into their huddle, because they were busy sort of calming it down, sending people back, we had a replay that, if the referees had seen, would have resulted in a disqualification for David Sloan. I'm 100% certain of that.
Yes,
now, it wasn't until at the end of the game that I saw what Cohen did, but if we'd spent a bit more time, I'm sure we would have found that replay as well, and we would have gone unsportsmanlike foul for Cohen, disqualification for Sloan, let's get on with the game.
Yeah, that's right. But even if you can't get the right replays, something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
You know, something is better than nothing. Now, look, there's no way in the world that Kate Unsworth saw that happening and called a common foul.
No.
Right? You know, it's too experienced and too good a ref to see something like that happen and just say, "Oh, it's just a common foul." Right? So she's not had an angle, and it may well be there's somebody in front of her, because I did look at that carefully.
There were bodies between her.
There were bodies. It may well be that it may well be that, and neither of the other, obviously there's a shot gone up, so somebody's signaling the 3-point line. You would hope that. The only thing I would say about the refereeing from this point onwards was they were refereeing on the basis that the game was as it had been, which was pretty ineffective for 3 quarters. And there was something, as I've said, there was something brewing. And it was kind of a see no here, evil here, no evil. And so really, you know, I should have been locked on what's going on under the basket. But it's just not an argument now. They just have to have, you know, even if you limit it to potential unsporting behavior and sports from like whatever, just limit it to that. You know, if you don't want to get to anything else, no coaches challenges, no nothing like that. You've got a monitor courtside. Every game they've got a monitor courtside. A coach can have YouTube on the bench on a 10-second delay, seeing it. And you've got 3 refs who probably didn't see exactly what happened, who then have to guess. It's just nuts. And compared to every other sport. And so I'm not having the consistency argument, or it has to be the same, or we have to have better camera angles. Give them what they can. Give them what you can, and let them make the best decision on the best information.
There's 3 cameras at every game. It's not like it's the robot thingies where it's just one angle.
If that information is not good enough, that's tough. The players have to take it. You know, you have to take it. You have to take the rough with the smooth. But it's not, you know, it makes refs into villains. You know, just like, you know, before, as I said, I've used this analogy before Hawkeye and cricket, you know, we had diplomatic incidents because of umpiring decisions. Now we have nothing. Now it's fine. You know, players just get on with it. Oh, TV says it's going down the leg side, fine, crack on. Instead of a player walking off thinking, that umpire's just ended my career because he's got a decision wrong. With that resentment that builds, and the resentment it builds in the team, and the sense of injustice. So that's right. So yeah, so I mean, I think that's pretty much it, really. It was unsportsmanlike on Cohen, it was disqualification on Sloan. Refs really didn't see it. They then went there. They also kind of spent 3 minutes discussing the fact that they didn't see it, and then sent the team to the benches and ended up with another bailout double technical.
Mockford and Sloan.
Yeah, and if they called on sportsmanlike on Sloan, that would have been the same as the Austin incident.
Yeah.
Which again I wouldn't have sat well with us. And I wonder if that played a part in not calling it unsportsmanlike or not calling a disqualification.
Maybe.
Who knows? But it just strikes. It was just a nutty situation that there's a picture on Twitter of what happened, or 10 seconds of video on Twitter what happened while the refs are still discussing it. It's so wrong, and so unfair on the refs. But then I thought, to be fair, I thought the game kind of spiraled a bit in relation to. I mean, there's a lot of energy. It was a great game.
Yeah, it was raucous.
Fantastic environment. I love the fact that we had the crowd who are actually cheering. The biggest cheer of the night was for French blocking a shot.
Yeah.
It wasn't for anybody making a shot. I love the fact that we've got a kind of a relatively educated crowd.
It is that thing of you don't need to play a video beforehand to tell them how to cheer and what to say.
Yeah, at the moments, and the best thing about live sport is it's the build up to the crescendo. Or be crescendo. It has to be the build up and the big moments, and some players are bigger than others. And but what I thought as the game went on, I thought, firstly, you can take us through it after that, but they blew a couple of calls, and at that point, it's 9:30 on a Friday night, and you've been at work all week, so I get that. But as a ref, your spidey sense should be kind of tingling a bit.
Mine was. I spent the next 3 plays just watching Sloan and Cohen, trying to commentate on peripheral because I thought something is going on here.
And there was stuff going on, and it happened, and they didn't do anything about it. The last 3 minutes wasn't good because Gordon got an awful non-foul call when he was going through a lob to him, and Durham came and hit him in the wrist. And then got a kind of a pretty weak technical for of bouncing a little bit. At 2 minutes to go in the game, and that was an awful non-foul call because I could see it. I was 100 yards away. I could see it because I had the angle on it, and there was nobody in the way. It wasn't like there was bodies to go through or anything like that. Did he hit him on the arm or not? Well, he did. That's why he missed. That's why it was short. And so that was a 3-point swing in the game. There was then Bailey was then ticking as well. Bailey and probably, Caledonia have had nowhere near as many problems this year as Newcastle in relation to the team. And Gareth, we've talked about them when they've kind of come. And then Gareth kind of squashed them down.
Yeah, he does.
I said something, but they got, there was Sloan shot 58 shots in 2 games, something like that. And suddenly it's gone. It doesn't happen again, And the same with, Bailey, doing his behind the back stuff. Gareth squashes them down. But, if they were going to have a kind of a weakness and frailty, it's been on the road. It's been in relation to probably the temperament of Bailey and to a lesser extent, Sloan. Sloan's been pretty good, to be fair. He's not showing that kind of. He's not showing that if you ask me 5 guys in the league who might try and hit somebody in the head, he wouldn't have been one of them.
He wouldn't, no.
He wouldn't. No, I could name 5. But
I could probably name 10.
So he's been pretty good. But Sloan didn't score a point in the 4th quarter of this game, and that came because of the fact that Cohen got into his head. And got into him physically. And as I say, it's kind of nice from an Eagles fan perspective to see somebody do that. I don't approve of what he did with the slam down. That's an unsportsmanlike foul, should have been called. But the rest of it was being a pest. That's basketball. You don't have to stand there and let somebody who's bigger and stronger than you run past you. But what the last minute of this game was basically a fight.
Let's get to that. So a minute and a half. It's a 1-point game still, 77-76. We're after the technical that you've talked about. First of all, Gordon, a really nice pass, smart pass in the lane. Could easily have gone up himself, shoveled it to French, big dunk, 79-76. 109 to go. Ali Hodzic then with an offensive foul, and it was one of those where there was a slight delay in the signal of what the foul was. The bodies are on the floor, and you could just feel which way is this going to go?
Yeah, Mark was calling for a travel. my initial thought was that it was an offensive foul.
Yeah.
Not saying that, because at this point there's a bit of emotion in me, so I'm gonna try to push that to one side, because, as you said quite properly on the telly, he wasn't going up.
Yeah. So his feet were inside the no charge circle, but the no charge circle is only if you're shooting. If you're going along the baseline, it doesn't count for anything.
Yeah, and so I mean, as I say, take this with a pinch of salt, because at this point I'm ravenous for a win. But my initial thought was that was a good call. And to be fair, French. What I will say about you guys was, I watched this TV show back, and I thought it was brilliant that you actually did most of this game for us, because everything that you and Tuck and Kieran and Ro were saying, like people denying people the ball and Newcastle not needing to get a bit of energy in the defense and all this stuff, was spot on, and around the environment and the noise and all that stuff. It really came across as really good, well-informed television, which is kind of sad for me and slightly painful for me to say. But it was good. And so, that was kind of probably a 60-40, 70-30 call. But I didn't think French was moving. So Ali Hodzic created the contact. He was not going up. Then I think it's probably a good call.
44.1 seconds to go. Clutch 3 late in the shot clock. Mockford 82-76. And it was so loud that play continued. There was possibly an illegal screen at midcourt. Everybody's going on. Nobody realizes there was a timeout called.
Well, Mockford made a hell of a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, Hamlet was really good in the second half of this game. He ended with 25, 6 and 6, and he started, he was a creator, and he made the right passes at the right time, and he had somebody who was knocking down shots on the wing. So, basically, their wing guys aren't, Kennedy, Kyle Johnson, they're not really guys who have been knocking down the 3-point shot with any clip. Kennedy's about 20% since Christmas. Kyle Johnson's 28% since he got here from the 3-point line. So having that lineup whereby it's literally a GB lineup where you had Teddy and Luke, and then Teddy and Luke and Ben Mockford on the 3, and then the small ball 4 and Gordon in the centre. So it was literally the same as having that lineup meant that the spacing was so much better, which is fine if you're knocking down shots. And Mockford, eventually produced what they signed him for effectively, and knocked down a hell of a shot. And the thing with Ben Mockford is, he makes shots of incredible difficulty. Because he jumps 6 feet, he jumps 3 feet in the air to shoot it. He shoots it from happily from 2, 3 or 4 feet behind the line. So that's a pretty bad shot for anybody, but to his credit, he knocked it down. What then happened was, from a referee perspective, was not good, right? Because firstly, nobody heard the horn, right? And Simon's running alongside the bench in front of me. I get that it's loud, right?
It was loud.
Secondly, Bailey, who is obviously, I think, is Sloan's mate, gets his retribution in on Cohen. And you only saw on the kind of second angle, but basically, and Stootle sees this, and he's going ballistic because Bailey took the last second, and it wasn't that he hit him with a screen; it was that he hit him with his shoulder to his face. And that's not accidental. Right, that not with it being Cohen, he was, and Bailey was talking as well at this point, so there's a lot going on at this point. Ref stood looking at that, does nothing, and then eventually, so we've got Cohen on the floor, you got the crowd up here, you got Bailey stood there, you've got Gareth screaming for a timeout, you've got Mark screaming for an unsportsmanlike foul, and you got absolute chaos. It's brilliant.
It was brilliant,
absolutely brilliant, and it could have gone up. Right, I think if as I say, there are a few. Rose said afterwards, just spoke to Rose afterwards briefly. I don't normally quote him in this podcast for obvious reasons. It has to have journalistic merit. But he said afterwards, man, if somebody had done that to me, I'd have been up and there'd have been stuff going on. And we've all been around people, that competitive now. The kind of the one thing that probably saves everybody from that going on is that Cohen tends to stay down when he's knocked down. Whether that's to exaggerate contact or otherwise, I'll not make a judgment. But he's not the one who gets back up looking for a fight. No. And Newcastle haven't exactly been the most together of teams all season either. I'm not saying
and they may not have even seen it.
They may not have even seen it.
They may not have even
so that is
so anyway. timeout. Yeah, Bedlam. The timeout gave us a moment to breathe. And then I thought it was a bit of a Rose said it on commentary as well, a rush shot. Not sure why Durham took that shot so quickly. He was under pressure, misses a 3.
Yeah, I think at that point, I think they were a bit fried, Caledonia. They haven't got a great away from home record. I haven't followed them carefully enough, but I don't know how many close games they've won away from home. And yeah, it wasn't a good shot from Durham. It was a good job by French not to foul him, because Newcastle have made that mistake on multiple occasions this year. And you're down 6, so you do need a 3. This is a big thing. If you're down 6 with two in a 3 possession game, like 40 seconds, you shoot it, they shoot it, you shoot it. You make a 3, you can play defense, and then you can go back. You have to get into the foul shot game. As a coach, once you get in the foul shot game, you've probably lost. You want to avoid getting into the fouls, having a foul, because you've probably lost. So shooting the 3, and Durham had already missed a shot all night, not good. But French was right there, right on the foul line, right on the 3-point line. And he's probably the hardest guy to shoot over on the Eagles team because he's active. So yeah, and then they got a lucky bounce.
Yeah, nearly got an offensive rebound. Eagles come up with it. There was almost a turnover, but actually Ali Hodzic had used his foot to kick the ball loose. So then Hamlet's fouled. He makes 2 free throws, 84-76. Sloan misses.
And Hamlet's fouled. This is the thing that gets me, right? After Ali Hodzic has kicked the ball, right? Eagles are putting the ball in play, right? You can see it on the TV. Hamlet comes back to get it. In the meantime, Sloan, 2 hands to the chest of Cohen, pushes him. And again, Cohen probably goes a little bit further back than you would expect. But it's a full-on, 2-handed push to the chest. And if I'm a ref at that point, as you say, there's no way in the world I'm not looking at those 2.
Yeah.
Right? Now, Pavel is stood there, inbounding the ball. It is right in front of him. That is an unsportsmanlike foul by Sloan. There's no question about it. You watch it back on the TV and people are like, oh, it's just a push. It's a push. He's not the guy's not even got the ball. He stood there. And that leads Cohen to then talking to Sloan, right? When Hamlet gets fouled. Then Hamlet gets fouled and Bailey starts walking behind Hamlet and they're jawing all the way up the court, right? To the point whereby and Hamlet's on the foul line and Bailey and Hamlet are jawing at each other. Remembering, as I say, the whole thing with Hamlet and Sloan and the elbow and the foot, right? And I've got 3 refs who are clearly thinking, what time's the train home? Because at that point, they have to get control of that. Now, nothing came of it, other than a bit of jawing, unnecessary jawing. But to give technicals, to give a technical for Gordon when you've just blown a call a minute and a half earlier, and to let all of that stuff go in the last 45 seconds, from Sloan's 2-handed push to all the jawing, all the talking that's going on at the court. And you see it on the TV, you see it clear as day, it's right there. Bailey gives Hamlet a little bump as he's walking up the court. And, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I would have actually forgiven a double technical at that point. Just shut up. You, shut up. Had it now, otherwise we're all going home. And I just thought, I thought at that point, I'm critical of that because I think they lost control the last 5 minutes after that happened because the spidey sense wasn't tingling in relation to what was going on between those teams. And you can't sometimes rely on the good nature of players. Not in that environment at that time. No. And so it didn't happen. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe basically it was all good-natured banter and maybe the refs are closer to it than me, so they're thinking it's fine.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't there. But everything I saw was, someone's nearly got, and obviously they don't, and to be fair, absolutely fair, at this point, they don't know what happened between Sloan and Cohen.
No, they don't, no.
Because they haven't called it as that. So, yeah, but something happened.
Yeah.
And something's continuing to happen. So you would hope that someone would get that, he would say, look, we need to keep an eye on these 2 because it was not great. And now you've got I bet it's the poor Scottish lads who've got a referee on Thursday.
Yeah, somebody's got to pick it up on Thursday, don't they? With Newcastle season on the line as well.
What's the under-over on fouls in the first quarter?
Yeah.
I would reckon about 22 fouls will be called in the first quarter for that game. Let's get Cohen on 2, Hamlet if he's playing, Cohen on 2, Sloan on 2, Bailey on 2, and French on 2. Straight away, sit them all down. Let the rest of them play.
So Sloan misses a transition 3 out of bounds for a Gladiators ball. Sloan then airballed a shot. Mockford Seemingly had the ball. Great play, though, by Onwest to swipe it away from him. Bailey dunked it, 78 with 16 seconds to go. Then Cohen's fouled. He's made 2 free throws, and that's the ball game.
Yeah, yeah. Apart from all the shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
So Gordon 32, Hamlet 25, 6 and 6, as you said. Mockford 3 of 4 for 3-pointers for 15 points. Durham 24.7 rebounds. Ali Hodgic 16 and 11 rebounds. Sloan 14.
What I will say about Caledonia, picking up and integrating, probably more integrating and picking up Durham and Ali Hodgic mid-season is a serious move. I mean, that is as good as it gets in mid-season, because Durham looks at high level, comfortable play. Ali Hodžić is a pillar in the way that Gareth's using. I mean, when he was at London, he was kind of a bit of a 4. He was kind of a little bit miscast. He never really had a specific kind of fit. But the way Gareth's using him and they're playing around him, and what he does do, Ali Hodžić, is there's very little wasted movement. He knows when to step out and to pass the ball and to set screens. He knows when to post up. He knows how to get to his spot. And, and he can score not relentlessly, but sufficiently in the post with a variation because of his footwork. He's a little bit going back to Leonard Stewart with his pivots and his...
He
isn't the same, but... he's not the same frame, but his pivots and his reverse pivots and all of that stuff, to pick him up, when they've now lost Tappe and Fraser. 2 really good moves. Then the knock on Caledonia is, are they going to be able to win? They're going to finish top 4, so it's good for them that they'll have a home game in the second leg of the quarterfinals. The knock on them is, are they going to be able to win an away game, win a semi-final if they get there on the road, if they have to play on the road in the second leg, because that's where they've been a little bit flaky on the road.
Yeah. So spent a lot of time on that game. I don't think we'll spend quite as much on.
And we were both there.
Yeah. I don't think we'll spend quite as much on this one. Leicester Riders 111, Plymouth City Patriots 68. Loving back for Leicester. No Gadsden, no Hawthorne for Plymouth. 8 minutes in, it's 19-15, and then Mackenzie and Menzies powered Leicester to a 15-4 run. It's 34-19 early in the second quarter and basically done.
Yeah, well, 2 teams going different directions. 2 weeks ago, it was a 2-point game. The one possession. Yeah. And now it's anything but. 2 things happened basically. Menzies was just unguardable because he could rebound and he was 7 foot. He's 7'1", 7'2", and Hassan 6'6". And the other guys are 6'6", and he scored. And so their second unit destroyed Plymouth's second unit, which in reality is probably Plymouth's third unit because of the injuries and the changes that they've had. And that once it got to a 10-12 point game, and then Dusha got
rejected.
And Dusha's the head of what is at the moment a fairly docile snake in Plymouth, and his ejection was a bit Elvis-y, if I use a phrase. He was a daft unsportsmanlike, which was genuinely unsportsmanlike. Because he dropped the ball and he grabbed the guy at midcourt who was the last man. So it was a bog standard last man sportsmanlike. And then basically there's a couple of players in a row he got hit. And I think Love just kind of, as he's passing the ball into the post, Love just poked him in the chin. I'm not saying deliberately or anything like that. And he turned around and quietly said something to the ref. And my guess is it probably involved an expletive.
Yeah.
And that's why the ref teed him immediately, because it wasn't because of his motion or his movement. In fact, if it wasn't an expletive, then it was an absolute disgraceful technical. Because he was talking to the ref. But he's got a little bit of a history for getting daft technicals, for saying stuff in frustration. And once you've already had the cheap unsportsmanlike, it's that rule again. 1-on-1, and that's the end of the game as a competition.
Yeah. Just went away from them in the second half. 22 for Whelan, 8 of 11 shooting. Mackenzie 20, 7 of 9 shooting. Love 13.7 rebounds, 9 assists. Leicester 11 made 3-pointers, 50% accuracy. Hassan 25 and 12. Dangakodo 22 points and 6 assists. The only 2 players in double figures.
The team 22 points. The one thing about Leicester is obviously Whelan was hurt, and Love was stuttering, and both of those things seem to be changing.
Mm.
And that's, and I think Whelan's been pretty ineffective for probably a couple of months coming off his toe injury.
Mm.
And you're beginning to see that the bounce is back and the confidence in the shot is back. And that makes them a real shot at the playoffs. If they can get, if that Whelan Loving Jackson thing is triumphant is right, and they're comfortable playing with Love, they're still not that deep in other spots as they have been before. But they've got a 7 or an 8 who can certainly, compete with anybody if they can get enough shot creation in the finals.
So let's come to today's games, starting in London. London Lions 89, Newcastle Eagles 68. No Decker, no Ward Hibbert, no Hamlet for the Eagles.
You just summarise the game there. No Hamlet, Eagles, I'm afraid. They can't score enough without him, I'm afraid, to come close to London. As I say, 25, 6 and 6 on Friday. So 6 assists. That's probably creating 37, 39 of their points. 8 threes into account. So he's got a hand in basically half the Eagles' points on Friday night, and you take him out. We got their team which is short of guards anyway. And I think he had an ice pack on his ankle sitting courtside. So I assume he's gone over on his ankle either in the warm-up or in practice. I assume they travelled yesterday. But that's a brutal hit for Newcastle. I mean, he has to be healthy. The stuff he does well, the stuff he doesn't do great. But you can't. They're not good enough to lose a league's leading scorer and play against the league's best team on the road when they're 2-13 on the road and have any real shot at it. They were relatively competitive early, but London are good. With the group that they have, it's actually a really difficult group to guard. There are the bunch of guards and forwards, all of whom can shoot. That's been kind of the vehicle for success in the BBL for time immemorial. Literally time immemorial. Everybody can shoot, and enough size to challenge things, enough creativity, and basically there wasn't Newcastle could put a finger in a dike in one place, but then there'd be a whole most Suluade would step up and knock down three. The water would spurt out somewhere else. So really, not much more to it than that.
No, French got his third foul early in the second quarter. Then the flurry of threes from London, they were 15 ahead at halftime, and that was...
I mean, he can't pick up. I mean, he picked up 2 fouls in the first quarter again in this. And you look at them and they are fouls. It's all what he's doing with his hands down low as opposed to challenging shots up top. He's been here long enough now. Not to be committing those fouls, or to be smarter about keeping his hands out. I mean, the London are rounding quite nicely, and they've only got they're helped by the shorter roster because everyone gets to play now, and the coach doesn't have to worry about spotting people on minutes or putting the young kids in. He's just got a team which is ready to go and waiting for the playoffs. So they make shots, then it's done. No one's coming close to them, basically. In this game, they made shots.
Best with 20.7 rebounds, 4 assists. Sharma 16.7 of 10 shooting. Shalawadi 12. They were 14 of 32 from free. Gordon 21, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Johnson 14 points to Foe 12. They were 4 of 22 from 3. And therein is the difference.
Won't it? And they were 4 of 22. At one point, they were 1 of 18. So the 3 that they made came when there was a 30-point game, which is nothing at all. So, I mean, they've got be interesting next year because they've had problems. The Eagles have always played Friday night, Sunday. Friday night at home, Sunday on the road. And the Sunday on the road is when you're tired. And Sunday, when you're on a trip, and the Sunday on the road is you've got to be ready mentally. Compete in those games. So I'm talking about Caledonia having problems on the road. Look, they're not 0-14 against everybody apart from Surrey. But Newcastle are. Another game in Plymouth in the Cup at the beginning of the season. And so I think that part of that might be, the maker. They're going to probably have to get a bit younger, I think, next year in relation to some of their spots, a little bit healthier, because there's been a noticeable drop off in performance between players on a Friday night and a Sunday at times this year. But London, I mean, Aaron Best is is making a late run for BBL Team of the Year, which is remarkable given that he kind of started as like the sixth import, you know, in people's mind. And this was one of Sharma's really good games. He's really impactful in this game.
So that meant if Plymouth were to win, they would clinch 8th spot, but they didn't win. Plymouth City Patriots 68, Cheshire Phoenix 85. Gadsden was back, still no Hawthorn. Anderson 5 early points for the lead, but Basanth got it back tied. Same again in the second quarter. Knicks led early. Gadsden's threes tied it up 36-36 at half time.
Cheshire came out jacking, absolutely shooting. I think Jamal had 5 threes in the first quarter. He didn't make many of them early on, but they were at half time. But they obviously got a short bench, and they came out and basically they weren't being shy about their shot selection. Plymouth are just, I'm afraid, you know, neither Besant or your man,
who had a different pronunciation today, so I'm just going with Otis.
Neither of those guys are knockdown scorers, and they need scorers. You know, they got Rashad inside, but losing Hawthorn is a hit. They lost Mark Edric Bell obviously earlier on, and I don't know what the efficiency was of Basanth and Ekafor, but in this game, because I didn't look at the stats after it, but I don't think it was very good. They missed a lot of shots. And Gadsden, PJ mentioned in his interview at the beginning that he was still a bit hurt. He made a couple of threes, but you know, his shot selection was very much give me the ball, I'm shooting it. And he played like 15 minutes. So, you know, they were always susceptible to a drought. And Cheshire were just relentless, to be fair. You know, I think Cheshire had had the bit between their teeth after the perceived injustice of Friday. Obviously, you do the Bristol Plymouth trip. I assume they stayed over. I mean, I might be wrong because it's obviously Cheshire. So you know. There's
also some history between these two teams for reasons I can't even remember. There was something where they didn't like. Was it last year's semi-final? Did they play each other in a knockout or something? There's something.
There's somebody enlightened me about the history, because we'll talk about it to death next week. About I can't remember, but it was. You know, Cheshire played hard, you know, and they've got players who do play hard. Archibald is an interesting player. He's a rookie. He's got good length. He at times he makes plays, and you go, you know, when he's extending and dribbling and getting to the rim, he glides. He's a glider. He glides to the rim. Austin and Evans are just Austin and Evans. Everybody knows what they are, and the rest of those guys are good. And Jack Hudson played well in this game as well, competitively. So.
Well, it was
the third quarter they made a run.
It was Austin, Jack, Archibald. They scored 15 of the first 17 points of the second half to lead 53-38, and that was basically the ball game right there.
There was a horrendous. There was another technical following a horrendous call. Claxon, Jamal Anderson, at the end of the third quarter. Absolutely, you know, the cleanest block. It actually the genius of his block was that he actually kind of contorted his body to get out of the way. Basanthe was driving at him and swatted it right in Austin's path for a layup at the other end. And the two baseline refs, the two near refs, called nothing. Andy Thackeray's on the logo miles away, and he calls a foul from the far side, which I'm quite sure when he looks back, he'll be thinking, whatever, just awful. It's not even close. You know, talk about not rewarding a fantastic defensive play. Naturally, because all the 4 Cheshire players who were around the ball all saw it, they immediately all go like that. And Ben probably has something to say, but that's off camera. And there follows a tech. I think it was a tech. I might be wrong, but even if it wasn't, I mean, it was just a horrible call, you know. And again, it's that kind of refs blow a call, and then we'll call a tech, and it's like. You know, it's a weird one because, you know, when you had 2 refs, you know, it was less likely that one would make a call that the other one would be absolutely sure was wrong.
Yeah.
When you got 3 refs, one ref can make a call of a foul. The other 2 can think, well, I wouldn't have called that, right? Looking at the same stuff, because generally there's 2 sets of eyes on where the ball is. If you're refereeing, the third set of eyes maybe off the ball, right? But they can't go and talk to each other and turn it over, and they never overturn the foul call.
No,
they're quite happy to go and have a chat about
Out of bounds.
Out of bounds, but no one ever overturns a foul call of one of their mates, and that might be, there's probably good technical reasons for that, and stuff for that. That was one, But what you would try and do is just say, it's tough. I mean, the refs are a team, so if you're part of a team, that's the last thing you want to do is to undermine your colleague. So I get that, it's really tough, but it's tough. But ultimately, you want the right result, and to have Jamal Anderson penalised for that play, just wrong. You can't. Just absolutely utterly wrong.
Bassam 13, Hassan 12, Brandon 12, Austin with 21 points and 10 rebounds, Jack 19 points, and Archibald 14 and 9.
It was never going to be good for Plymouth being the team that got Larry Austin after his ejection.
Yeah, it wasn't. So let's go to the excitement of Manchester Giants 82, Leicester Riders 83. There was a lot of size on the bench unavailable today because you had Walker and Menzies at one end, Robertin at the other end. Yeah. Even start, tied at 17 at the end of the first quarter. Leicester not really shooting the ball very well in the first half. And then Dirk Williams caught fire at the start of the second quarter. Giants scored 13 in a row and were up 29-17.
Yeah, and Rob got his bench out quick because his bench started taking some. It wasn't so much that Dirk makes tough shots, which he does, but it was primarily making them on the bench. But also they started doing some Leicester-like things and taking some shots which weren't the type of shots that he wanted. So suddenly with 8 minutes to go, that the starters are coming back in. Bowman struggled, Walsh struggled. Walsh got a technical. Bowman, committed a 3-shot foul on Dirk and didn't wasn't really able to contribute positively. And so that it was a question of lineups. That lineup gave Manchester a 15-point lead. And then the question was basically, could Leicester claw it back over the course of the rest of the game? And Nick Lewis made a couple of shots as well, and Leicester really were out of sync in the first half. They weren't. I won't say they weren't ready to play, but you're right. They missed some open shots. They weren't over competitive defensively. And when Dirk got going, and then Nick Lewis made a couple of shots as well. They were staring down the barrel, but they're a bend and don't break team, and obviously Rob gets a chance to speak to them at half time. And the first 5 minutes of the third quarter, they're totally different.
14-1 run early in the third quarter. Whelan and Jackson doing the damage, and they're 46-47 up, and then Dirk went out with a cut as well. Yeah, he was gone for a long time as they tried to sort that out.
It wasn't even that they were just 14-1 run. It was just the whole demeanour and the whole energy about them. Was, Love got to the rim and they were just getting what they wanted. And at that point, I struggled to see them losing because Manchester, as I say, were a little bit. They were defensively. They were competitive, but they weren't great. And Leicester were missing some shots. And Manchester obviously kind of shorter bodies.
End of the third quarter, though, Lewis and Joseph both hit threes. They scored the last 7 points. They're out to 65-58. And then into the fourth, Love hit a 3, Whelan hit 3, 4 points from Adekoya in between, and they got it back to a one-shot game.
Yeah, they kept doing that. They kept coming back. Manchester couldn't sustain stuff. Fletcher played the whole second half, and that's tough against Leicester when they're running Mackenzie and Love. And I was surprised Vince didn't get Callum in the second half to give Fletcher below. I thought they were going to struggle down the stretch. And basically, Green got going a little bit, but Leicester was a good scouting performance by Leicester. In relation to Dirk made some shots on the bench guys, but the Leicester starters were really locked into what they needed to do defensively. And then at the end of the game, about 3 minutes to go, and it's kind of back and forwards. Nelson Henry comes out and he plays Adekoya at the 5. Again, probably for defensive purposes as much as anything else, albeit Adekoya subsequently made a big shot. And it was because, they were, they were really competitive defensively, I thought. Robertson was impressive for Manchester. His game,
he was good.
Game, to be absolutely fair, we weren't quite sure what he was at the beginning of the year. But he's relentlessly consistent now, and he's also he's able to catch the ball a little bit further away from the rim and finish a couple of times as well. So he's been a big part for them. But their shot quality wasn't great, even though they do make tough shots. And even when they went out into that lead at the end, on the basis of they making a tough three, which you're going to get to, it was a question of could they hang on, and they just couldn't.
2 minutes ago, Lee in the corner, 82-78. Adekoya, though, a corner three of his own, 20 seconds later, 82-81. And then 1:20 to go. Nice pass from Dirk to Green going to the basket. He gets fouled and misses both free throws.
Yeah, he missed a couple in another game a few weeks ago. I can't remember which game it was.
Was it the Cheshire game on TV?
Yeah, the Cheshire game on TV. Yeah, and that's the kind of thing. He's he's a decent shooter. So he's young and he's playing a lot of minutes. And he ultimately didn't knock them down when he needed to.
105 to go. Mackenzie gets open, top of the key, knocks it down. 82-83. Leicester back in front.
They were getting, this is the thing about Leicester, they were getting their shots off nice movement, off cuts, off little Mackenzie refused to screen, spun back to the middle. He's got a 15-foot jump shot. He's not having to create that himself. He's not having to be, they're not having to give the ball to Dirk or to Fletch 40 feet from the basket, having played the whole, Fletcher's case, played the whole second half and say make a play. There's a different level of defense that Leicester are playing to what Manchester are playing. Mackenzie knocked down that shot, and then Leicester had Manchester had 2 looks, and they couldn't get either of them.
Timeout advance. Lee misses a long 2, having been flushed off the 3-point line. Leicester come the other way. Loving missed an open 3, which potentially would have won the game. And then Giants run the clock down. Fletcher to the rim. Everybody collapses on him. It's a difficult shot, and he misses. Leicester get the rebound, win the game.
Excellent defense. You watched it back. They sent him right. They sent him into a crowd. He got the ball up on the rim. And we've seen Taj Green tip them in.
Yeah.
So he got the ball up on the rim. A little bit too much size there, but he is a heck of a load on him at this point in time. The last 3 games, I think he's something like 5 of 35 or something from the floor. Against teams that are good defensive teams, London, Sheffield, and Leicester. And they're putting a lot of expectation on him because they don't. I was surprised Nick Lewis didn't get back in this game. He didn't play in much of the fourth quarter at all. I was surprised Kofi Joseph played as much as he did, and Nick Lewis played as little. If I'm honest. Because Nick Lewis was making shots and was talking. And it was one of the things about he may have just been able to give them the.
Well, like Jason said, he was the one guy who goes, "Oh, good, Dirk's out."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, more shots. Yeah. On top of that, I appreciate the matchup probably isn't great because then if you take one of your bigs out, then you've got a guard Loving and Adekoya. But when Adekoya comes in, and you've got Loving in the 4 and Adekoya at the 5, I'm thinking, well, Green and Robertson can guard them. I would take Lee and have Nick Lewis in the game because Robertson can guard Adekoya. It's on the side spaces. You wouldn't want Robertson guarding Nelson Henry, obviously. So I thought they missed a trick there because I think Nick Lewis might have just made a couple of shots to win them that game, and he never got a shot at it. But no, Leicester defense was, when it mattered. When it comes down to winning on the road is bog standard. Can you get a stop when you need to? Can you get 2 stops when you need to? Can you make, we've seen multiple games in Manchester this year where with 30 seconds to go, and they ran a play for Dirk, or to get for Dirk dribbled the ball to the court, he threw it to Fledge, circled back, and Dirk was meant to come and get the ball on the wing. Leicester switched the screen on the wing, face guarded him, just like Cohen was doing with Sloan that we talked about earlier on, didn't let him touch the ball. Fletcher's got nowhere else to go. He's got to pull a play out, ends up throwing it to Lee. Lee has a very tough shot. Because the defense at the far, that's because the defense knew what was coming. And the defense said that, and the coach said, we are not letting Dirk touch the basketball. Outstanding, because we've all watched the videos. We've all seen it time after time in that gym. He touches the basketball anywhere. It's going in. And so how do you stop that? You deny. And that type of stuff is the difference between winning close games and losing close games.
Yeah.
I've seen it multiple times in that gym this year where teams haven't been as prepared. and they've given up shots at the end of the game, or given up Fletch going left.
Yeah. And we go, what a great play by Fletch, or we go, what an incredible shot from 28 feet by Dirk. But that's what he does.
The most miserable man in basketball.
Yeah.
And says it's nothing to do with a great play. Every action has a reaction because of the inadequate defense, or because people aren't doing what they're meant to do defensive. Right? Yeah. And that ultimately the joy sucker comes in, sucks all the joy out of it. I say, it's your fault, it's your fault. Long may that continue.
Indeed.
Because I'm a great believer that everyone's always at fault for something.
So Green with 21 points. Williams.
He won't get me a long career on the telly.
No. I don't think. Williams 15. Roy Keane's not doing too badly out of it.
The baby.
Lee 14 points and 10 rebounds. Love 17.6 rebounds, 6 assists. Whelan 15, Jackson 13 for Leicester.
People are going to have to start game planning for Love, because at the moment I don't think there's anybody got any idea precisely what they do when they're guarding him. He's just like treated like any generic screen and roll guy, and he's better than that. And he's got some little tricky dribbles and push dribbles and the ability to pass the ball late or to finish late, so he kind of gets to the rim, but up until the very last second he can hit the man in the corner, or he can finish at the rim. So I don't know what the coverage is going to be for him. I don't think he can go under, because he can knock down threes. You might have to be kind of in a deep drop coverage and kind of challenge him to shoot the floater, because that's a one kind of shot that I haven't really seen out of him yet, is the floater. But he's good. He's really growing into it. He's going to be an issue. If he's good.
Let's get to the final game. Caledonia Gladiators 102, Scorchers 77. Ali Hodgic going to work early on, out to a 14-5 lead. Malcolm 3 sparked a 7-0 run in the second quarter, and it was 50-32, and they were home and hosed, basically.
Yeah, I think Surrey's kind of defense went kind of beyond permeable into porous. Certainly their interior defense. I mean, I can't believe Arrows had an easier night in relation to getting to his spot and scoring the ball. Kieran made a really good point on the commentary about how they were just letting him get to his spot, and they weren't pushing him out. They weren't trying to front him. They were just allowing. He was the focal point that Caledonia played through. He would pass. If the double didn't come, he would take his time and he would lay it in, or he'd make a pass out or whatever. And obviously Johnson is undersized for Faro. Jack Donnelly can probably meet him, but it's a lack of any scheme from Surrey in relation to how we're going to discomfort them, which I thought was the story of the first half. McFoley made some shots, and they made, as I say, they're a competent offensive team. Sorry, they've got competent offensive players, but they've given up the goals defensively. That's the story of it. I didn't watch the second half. I'm sorry. I watched.
I had it on. I can't confess to have been spent much time watching it.
I don't like watching two games at once, so I watched the first half. Whilst there was half time in the Manchester and Leicester game in the third break, and then but I thought the second half because
it was over by then.
20 game for a team that's not going to win, I'm afraid.
Ali Hodzic, 21 points, 5 assists. Bailey, 18 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Durham, 16 points. Mafoley, 18. Johnson, 14. Jack Donnelly, 13. So quickly run through the league table. London to 30 wins now, 30-4. Leicester need only one more win or one Bristol loss to secure second place. They're 24-10. Bristol are 23-11, and Leicester have the head-to-head. Caledonia have all the head-to-head, so they're going to finish 4th, 19, and all the head-to-heads of the teams below them, 19-15. Cheshire.
I'm quite sure Gareth will be playing the kids on Thursday night.
I don't think so. I think Sloan and Bailey will be demanding to be out there somehow.
No, come on, Gareth, do the right thing.
If only to make it entertaining next Sunday. I mean, who wouldn't want to see that next Sunday? Yeah.
Gareth was quite proud of his 13-2 home record, as he should be. So I'm pretty sure they'll be
14-2 now.
14-2 now. I'm pretty sure they'll be full up to win on Thursday night.
Cheshire 18-17, Sheffield 17-17, and Manchester 17-18. They can still finish in any order, those teams. Particularly as I don't think Cheshire do very well in the head-to-heads. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'll work it out. And then Plymouth 11-23, just one game away, because Newcastle are 9-25. So obviously they do play next Sunday, but in order for that,
but Plymouth are playing at London, aren't they? So you don't.
Plymouth are at London on Friday, and Newcastle are at Caledonia on Thursday. So for Sunday to matter, Newcastle have to win and Plymouth have to lose.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, I mean,
then Newcastle would have to win by 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
We assume that. So, I mean, I'm interested in the spot for 7th because I'm interested in who Leicester are going to get. Because Leicester plays Sheffield on Friday. Yeah, and that might be a game and then a Cheshire on Sunday. So it's feasible that Leicester could be in a position to choose their opponents at Cheshire.
So I can give you the head-to-heads. Cheshire. Yeah. Actually, it's not Cheshire. It's Sheffield who suffer in the head-to-heads. Cheshire have the head-to-head with Manchester 3-1. Yeah. Manchester have the head-to-head with Sheffield 3-1. Yeah. Sheffield have the head-to-head with Cheshire 2-2. So the combined head-to-heads of the three teams is Cheshire 5-3. Manchester 4-4, Sheffield 3-5. So if they all finished 18-18, then it would be Cheshire, Manchester, Sheffield.
Let's just work on the basis, right, that Manchester will beat Surrey, right?
Yeah.
I think at this point in time, not an unfair conclusion to draw.
Yeah.
Right. So Manchester go to 18-18. Right. Then you have. Leicester plays Sheffield on Friday and Cheshire on Sunday, yeah?
Yeah.
So let's say that Sheffield win that game against Leicester. No, okay. let's say Leicester beat Sheffield, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, Sheffield are what, 17-19?
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, if Leicester beat Sheffield on Friday night, Sheffield are finishing 7th.
No, Sheffield would be 17-18 at that point.
17-18, okay,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
They've got to play
they've got to play Bristol as well.
Right. So let's say they win that, they lose at Leicester, but they beat Bristol. They go 18-18. Manchester finish 18-18, and Cheshire are currently 18-17. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that means the last game of the season will be Cheshire and Leicester.
Yeah.
So Cheshire win to finish 5th. Right.
Yes.
19-17.
Yeah.
But Leicester, Leicester would then end up playing Sheffield because Sheffield lose the head-to-head with Manchester.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, or Cheshire, or if Leicester win that game, then
they'd be 18-18. It would depend on whether Sheffield won or not, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
If Sheffield won, then it would be. Oh no, I think it'd still end up as Sheffield.
Still end up as Sheffield. So at the moment, the odds are on Leicester playing Sheffield, and then Bristol playing Caledonia, Bristol playing Manchester. So the odds are on Cheshire finishing 5th at the moment, if we look at it that way. Right? Oh, how interesting. Sorry, of course, anything could happen. So we'll just ignore that.
Yeah.
Offering on. Sorry.
Yeah.
I am intrigued at the possibility of Leicester being in a position on Sunday to pick their opponents, deciding whether they want to win that game or lose that game at Sheffield. That always intrigues me.
Yeah.
That is the last game. So they will know that if we beat Cheshire, we will play this team. And if we lose to Cheshire, we will play that team.
Yeah.
That can store up all sorts of fun for the postseason.
Well, but then by the same token, Cheshire will know if we win this game, we'll play this team, and if we lose this game, we'll play that team. And there might be some benefit in.
True.
It's one of those things where there might be some benefit in finishing 6th rather than 5th, I don't know I don't know how they match up with what their head-to-heads are with Leicester and Bristol, for example. Yeah. Maybe they would prefer to play Leicester and Bristol than Caledonia because they. I don't know. It's all of those sorts of things.
Yeah. I'm interested in the kind of human side of it. Pin up the poster in the board and these.
Yeah, they deliberately lost.
They picked us.
Yeah. That didn't work out. Who was it in the NBA did that a few years ago and they got swept? Somebody got swept, didn't they?
Yeah. And I mean, that's great. I mean, that's great because that stores up fun. That stores up fun for the playoffs. You see, that's all I'm interested. You know, these guys wanted a piece of you. What are you going to do? A team like that'd be great. Because you're always looking for a bit of fun, and for all
and watch Surrey go and beat Manchester now throughout all into disarray.
And to be blunt, for all the stuff about coding slowing and all this stuff, at the end of the day, what makes sport is the competitiveness, the edginess. It's not, you know, it wouldn't be fun if there wasn't an edge there and stuff there, you know. So, you know, that's all. It is what it is. You know, people, you know, Sloan lost his cool, go and did something he shouldn't, move on, get on with it, and let's just hope for more fun down the line.
Indeed. On Thursday.
On Thursday, yeah. I think we
will.
Yeah. I hope it's the poor Scottish lads who've got that game on a Thursday night, and that's pretty unfair, I think, to make someone travel up 5 hours from England to referee that on a Thursday. But actually, I think what you'll find is it'll be pretty tame.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it'll be pretty tame. And the other thing is, you know, at the end of the day, if you know, none of it may matter if Hamlet's ankle's still in an ice pack.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I don't. You know, it's just, you know, it's the one player that they just cannot absolutely at all refuse to handle losing.
Well, this time next week, the regular season will all be over. And
maybe there's this time. Oh, sorry, I was.
Yeah. Well, mate, who knows? Maybe if our YouTube numbers go up, we will be back, Dave and I, next Sunday to pour over it all. But for now, have a great week. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.